Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Stereotypically Japan podcast. My name is Michael, and I want to discuss some of the different stereotypes and misconceptions about Japan. This week, I want to discuss entertainment, and if my voice sounds a little strange or nasally, I want to apologize again this week. I came down with a bit of a cold, and I think it's because of the change in season. It always hits me pretty hard, and I end up getting sick like this around the same time every year. There isn't much I can do about it, so I'm sorry. The entertainment industry is a very interesting topic here, and I think it covers a wide range of different forms of entertainment. It can range from TV shows, to movies, to even things like Pachinko. I want to focus on TV and movies, but I'll also touch on Pachinko as well. Let's start with TV dramas since we all know and love them. Japan has some pretty good shows. Off the top of my head, people love Hanzawa Naoki, Jin, Unnatural, Vivant, and one of my personal favorites, Hotspot. If you haven't seen it, you should. It's written by Rhythm, and it's about an alien living here, just trying to live life and fit in. But of course, the truth gets out, and it's hilarious. Not in your traditional laugh-out-loud sense, but in a realistic, this-could-happen kind of way. That's what makes the story unique. It's something very specific to Japan, and that's where Japan excels, in the stories that can only be told here. Even on Netflix, there are some interesting shows that were made here, like Sanctuary. It's all about sumo, which is typically not a very common theme because it's difficult to make a drama about such a culturally significant sport and do it justice. But with Netflix, they had the budget to do it well. There are many more examples that I could give, but what Japan does right, there is a lot that it does wrong too. The main reason, I feel, and have heard, revolves around 2 points. The first being budget, and the second being scheduling. Regarding the budget, it's extremely low. Mostly because there is no global syndication for most dramas, which really limits how much they can spend. They focus so much on the domestic market, and that has a severe snowball effect. They focus on the Japanese market, who watches TV. And who watches TV? Mostly the older generation. What do they like? They like very typical and conservative stories. Making that kind of TV show has very little appeal outside of Japan, so there is no international revenue, so there is no budget. There are many things wrong with that way of thinking, and unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon. There are a lot of reasons for them to change. For example, Korean dramas are big here, and of course Hollywood dramas too. Netflix and other streaming services are a lot more common than over a decade ago. And don't even get me started on YouTube. There are so many services fighting for people's attention. There is no way the entertainment industry, especially TV dramas, can survive under such conditions. Yet, there is always going to be an outlier like Vivant or something that makes executives think that there is still a market for what they're making. But even then, for example with Vivant, each episode only had about 100 million yen budget, or based on the currency exchange right now, about $650,000, due to the fact that they had a partnership with Unext for the drama. To put that into perspective, the average budget in Japan for a drama is about 35 million yen, or $230,000. Hollywood dramas, for example Lost, had about $5 million per episode. Korean dramas are around $300,000 per episode. While Korean dramas have a bigger budget, they seem to be able to do so much more with what they have, specifically because of the stories they tell. If you have ever watched a Korean drama, you'll know what I mean. They are so unpredictable, or predictable, or something, you just never know what direction it's going in. They aren't all good, but they are all different. There is a basic flow to the stories, but how they get there is always unique and interesting. Even when they do a remake, they go out of their way to add that Korean touch to it, whatever that means. For example, recently they are remaking a Japanese drama called Confidence Man JP, and it's called Confidence Queen. I first started watching it, and it's quite different from the original. I was trying to compare it to it, but after a few episodes, I realized that I shouldn't be trying to compare them. They are different, of course, and I don't really know why I was expecting it to be just the exact same thing, but with Park Min-young instead of Nagasawa Masami. Instead, the Korean version took the Japanese version, which is quite a light show, very similar to Leverage or something like that, and added a whole backstory plot to the main characters. It added more depth to the story, and while I haven't finished it yet, I assume it'll flesh out an overall arc, which the Japanese version just doesn't have. Now on the flip side, if you look at the Japanese remakes of other shows, they're almost all universally terrible. The Japanese remake of 24 was so bad, I couldn't even watch it. But I did watch it, and it made me angry. It was such an unbelievable story for Japan that it was just I don't even know. I can't find the words. I tried watching the remake of Suits. The original series was really popular in Japan, so I can imagine why they would want to remake it. But again, it was terrible. The whole tone of the show was off. It just felt cheap. And for a show about a top-class law office in New York, making it seem cheap just completely goes against the whole concept of the law firm. Another example is Marry My Husband. They tried to remake Please Marry My Husband, a Korean drama with Park Min-young again. It was also just so bad. What happened just proves my point about how Japanese dramas are just different. They tried to remake a Korean drama, which is very focused on story and backstory and giving context for everything in a Japanese way, which means they cut out everything and just tried to turn the 16 episodes of the Korean drama into 10 episodes of a Japanese drama. And by doing so, they cut out some of the side stories and side characters just to try to trim the fat. But what they ended up doing was cutting away so much of the fat that all you were left with was a dry hunk of meat with no flavor. They couldn't even get the tone right. It was just so off. I tried to look at it from the same perspective as I did with Confidence Queen, and just to think, okay, this is a Japanese version, so don't compare it to the original. In this case, it's a feeling of loss, whereas with the Korean version, it's a feeling of gain, where there is so much more story, and it's easier to look past having too much than it is to ignore losing so much. The last example I want to give, and believe me, I could give more, is Roppongi Class, the remake of Itaewon Class. I really don't know how they could have gotten it so wrong. And in this case, they didn't trim the story too much, but I think they were really wrong with the casting. This is a bigger issue with the industry too, because they will try to choose the cast based on who is popular now, or who they want to try and push and make more popular, not who would be most suitable for the role. Now, I have nothing against Ryoma Takeuchi, but I think he was a bad choice for the main role. I mean, who could you possibly choose to fill the role of Park Seo-joon? Honestly, I can't even think of someone, but I would have done it differently. And having Yurina Hirate as Iso? I don't know. I don't think you could find anyone better than Kim Dami. She plays the ride-or-die role so well in the drama. And who would I use again? I don't know. I have no idea. And that's the point. If you can't do it well, why do it at all? Is it just a cash grab? Why risk doing the exact same thing, just worse, when you could be doing something different, something better? I originally thought Park Min-young was a terrible choice for Confidence Queen, but only because I thought she was just trying to copy Nagasawa Masami, and that really just doesn't suit Park Min-young's character. And in the first 2 episodes, I think that's what she was doing. But after that, I think she just started to make the role her own. And it's quite different, and that's what it needs to happen in order to consider making something like that a success. And the industry in Japan just doesn't work that way, which is why so many projects are destined to fail before they even start. Speaking of failing before they start, Japanese movies share a similar fate. Except there are different reasons for that shortcoming. If I have to choose which was more successful over the other, then I would say 100% Japanese movies are a lot more successful than TV dramas. Even more so with the recent release of National Treasure, which was universally praised by all. The acting, the story, the pacing, everything. It was just such a well-done movie. But that's the exception, not the rule. Behind the scenes of a lot of movies, schedules are tight and only finalized in the last minute before shooting. Sometimes rewrites for scripts are given to actors or actresses in the morning of the shoot. Sometimes the stories are rewritten after being shot as well. Now, that may be true for any kind of production, Hollywood, Japanese, Korean, anything. But remember, in Japan, the budget is a fraction of that in Hollywood. So any changes or things like that are amplified exponentially when there is so little room already. There just isn't any demand for live action movies out in Japan. But do you know what there is a demand for? Animation movies. I was doing a bit of research for this, and if you look at the top grossing movies in Japan of all time, and of the top 50 movies, 22 of them are Japanese. Now, out of those movies, how many of them are animation? What do you think? I'll give you a bit of time to think of your answer, but maybe half, or maybe more than half. I don't know, but are you ready? 18. 18 out of the 22 movies are animation. And speaking of National Treasure earlier, that's currently in 15th position. 1 and 2 are Demon Slayer. 3 is Spirited Away. Also in the top 10 are Your Name, One Piece, Slam Dunk, Princess Mononoke, and Howl's Moving Castle. Also, as a side note, 4 Harry Potter movies are also on the top 50. Also, Pirates of the Caribbean, E.T., Jurassic Park, Star Wars. Maybe you can see a bit of a trend here, but pretty much any other movie with their own attraction at Disney or Universal Studios. Why even bother making a movie with real people when you can just draw them, right? You don't need to deal with any of the usual problems that people bring with them, like having to feed them or needing a place for them to change or go to the bathroom, something like that. Those kinds of things just get in the way. While there are some good movies in Japan, the industry just doesn't support them as much as they should. Instead, they just churn out animation after animation after animation. There's nothing wrong with that, and there are some amazing stories and art you can find, but they just aren't movies, you know? If the entertainment industry in Japan wants to keep up, there is a solution, and it isn't a mystery. In fact, it's obvious and something they've dabbled in a little already, and something I actually mentioned earlier, and that's with streaming services. There is a different set of rules that apply, and there isn't the expectation of making advertisers happy, so they are free to do the kind of stories they want. This is true for movies and dramas alike. One example of what I mean is Sanctuary, the sumo drama I mentioned earlier. It was able to do a story on a subject that's a bit more difficult to cover, and on top of that, they're able to use whoever they wanted to use and who would be the best match for the role, and not just someone who's popular. One of the actors, Pierre Taki, was arrested on drug charges sometime before, and in Japan, that's a big no-no. So after someone has that on their record, their careers are basically over. But on Netflix, they cast him for the role because he was such a good match, and it was better for that. But there is no way he would have been chosen for something on Japanese television. The final bit of entertainment I want to talk about, and I use the word entertainment loosely here, is Pachinko. So, what is Pachinko? It's gambling. And it doesn't matter how you look at it or want to justify it, but it is gambling. How can there be so many pachinko parlors in Japan when gambling is illegal, you may wonder? Well, you can pretty much imagine the answer, and that's money. The government loves money, but they want to keep their clean image. Yeah, that's an oxymoron, I know. So they created a legal gray zone to include pachinko, sports betting on things like horse racing, boat racing, bicycle racing, and auto racing, and the lottery. Starting with the lottery, it's very interesting, and I think it's the cleanest form of gambling, if that makes sense. The way it works is that in Japan, the prize is capped at under 50% of the total sales for tickets, and the rest of that revenue goes towards public projects. Like I said, the government loves money. Sports betting is legal because it's been a large part of Japanese culture. After the war, the government created sports betting to help fund the reconstruction of the nation, and since then, it has been legal under the special We Love Money law. And again, the money is used for public funding. And as we all know, the government loves money. Finally, pachinko. It's a little more complex. And while it is true, the government loves money, it's also true that the government is scared of backlash and making people unhappy. And pachinko has been a huge part of Japanese culture since before the war. It was basically one of Japan's main sources of entertainment for many people, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. They're too scared to do anything about it, because pissing people off who play, the people who own, and the people who operate such a huge money-making industry is apparently not a very good idea. They've tried many times before, and very unsuccessfully. Just to give you an idea of how much pachinko brings in, the amount of money that pachinko parlors in Tokyo generate in 1 year is more than the total gambling industries of Las Vegas, Macau, and Singapore combined. I want you to think about that for a minute, but honestly, it's almost impossible to imagine just how much money that is. So pissing off that many rich Koreans is not a good idea. And yes, there are a lot of Korean owners of pachinko parlors in Japan. The reason is, after the war, many Koreans couldn't get more common jobs in Japan, the mainstream things that most people get. So they had to resort to other means of earning money, like the budding entertainment industry at the time, pachinko. Even the biggest pachinko company in Japan, Maruhan, which you have seen probably everywhere with those big red circles, was founded by Han Chan-woo, who came to Japan after the war and ended up becoming one of the richest people in the country, and Maruhan operates and controls about 10% of the parlors in the country. 10% of a boatload of money is still a boatload of money. So, now that you understand why they won't touch pachinko, How do they make it legal? It's a very Japanese way of doing it. So, Japan classifies gambling, as you would imagine, the activity of playing a game of chance for the direct exchange of money. So what happens is there is a three-pronged system here. You pay for little metal balls that you can use to play a game of fun and entertainment at the parlors. And you win more little balls. And you can exchange those little balls for toys, chocolates, snacks, or little bits and bobs. Then, you head over to the Tokyo Union Circulation Shop, or the TUC shop, that's located nearby. And that's a very important point. It's a totally separate entity, all owned by the TUC Union. You can happily sell all of your prizes to them for cash. And they are amazing prizes after all, right? And finally, we have our wholesale distributors, who will purchase those wonderful snacks and toys from the TUC shops, just to ensure that they have enough money to buy from the customers, and then sell those little trinkets back to the parlors so they have enough money to support the TUC shops. And then the parlors also have enough of the products to exchange to the customers, who are more than happy to pay for those little metal balls to exchange for. Now, doesn't that sound like a lot of fun? The way it works is that each little ball is maybe 1 yen, or 4 yen, or even 2 or 0.5 yen. It all depends. But in most cases, almost all of the machines really only pay out about 60 to 80% of what you put in. So, the machines are literally just exchanging, for example, 1,000 yen to 600 or 800 yen. Playing Pachinko just gives you a sense of winning with spinning numbers and flashing lights and using your favorite characters to entice you to spend more money for hours of entertainment. And that is actually all it is. You aren't gambling, you're just paying for entertainment. The people who try to win money from them actually want to believe they are gambling and have a chance. But actually, a snowball has a higher chance of surviving in hell. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I want to start to expand the topics I'll discuss on the shows a little bit. So, I might not just necessarily be on the stereotypes and misconceptions of Japan anymore. There are only so many topics that you can discuss about that, as you may have probably noticed from this episode. So, if there is something that you would like to hear about for a topic for me to discuss or something, please just let me know. I really appreciate all of you for sticking around with me this far. I think there are going to be some interesting changes and things in the near future. As always, if you can leave a review or a comment or anything at all, recommend it to some friends or family. It really does truly help the podcast more than you can ever imagine. Until next time, the pleasure has been all mine, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Ja ne.